The current labor force shortages are threatening to hinder the rebound in the vacation rental market in the US as well as in Europe. Let's focus a bit on the US first, thanks to Luke Bujarski. He's the co-founder of Extenteam, a staffing provider for short-term rental businesses. He's just published the US Accommodations State of the Workforce report. He'll share with us the biggest insights and takeaways from this report, talking about where the labor shortages are the biggest, talking about solutions that companies may have. Let's dive straight into it. Dear Rental Scale Up members, thank you for joining us today. I'm with Luke Bujarski. Luke is the co-founder of Extenteam. Extenteam is a company that does staffing solutions for property management companies, especially in the US. But you'll see that Luke brings us an international view, given his background, on what's going on right now. If you're a property manager, you may know it's kind of hard to hire people now. And I'm talking about hiring people either on the grounds for operation sites, but I've been talking with people looking for example, growth hackers to find new listings. People can help them bring on board more supply. So there's really a shortage of staffing right now happening in the US, but I've seen this as well happening in Europe. So let's see with Luke today, talk about, of course, his profiles, what his company does, but as well what's going on right now, because given his job, his position right now, he's really able to take the pulse of the situation when it comes to staffing. Luke, thank you so much for coming today. How are you?
Wonderful. Thanks, Thibault, for having me here. Great to be here.
I was saying that you have this great international background and overview about the industry. Maybe can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for that pre-intro, Thibault. And I've been in the travel industry and hospitality space for, definitely over a decade, mostly on the research, media, and consulting side of the business. I was a research director for Focusrite, which is a international research company focused on the travel industry, a research director for Europe, actually doing a lot of the online travel market sizing and trends research that we're doing for the company there. And then also was the founding director for Skift Research, where we built up our knowledge reporting base there out of New York. And I've been doing a lot of consulting work on the brand side of the equation, digital marketing and distribution, and also, now on the staffing side of the equation with Extenteam. And the company has been around in one shape or form for about 10 years now. It really is a company built by vacation rental managers or property managers for property managers. My partner, Ari Ermelos, he's deeper on the operations side, has basically been working with virtual team members for the last 10 years with his property management company. I joined Ari a couple of years ago to head up growth and marketing and overall just business development for the company. And we've been seeing a tremendous growth over the last year, just given the timing of everything that's happening.
Luke, that's really great. Thanks for introducing yourself, because like I said, I mean, it's such a great fit for us. Rental Scale Up, we have 40% of the people listening, watching, or reading the content. 40% are from Europe, 40% are from North America. And you have this, this background, and you can talk about trends, and you could talk about staffing. So I'm very curious to hear more. So as I was saying, first, what's the situation like in the US? We hear that there's a shortage in staffing. So what have you really noticed? You have like data, trends, or facts that can give some better details on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely, Thibault. And, this is really kind of goes back to, I don't think we need to really recap everything that's happened over the last year in terms of demand plummeting for hospitality in general, and then also, with the vacation rentals really picking up a lot of that uh, remaining demand, and really kind of, let's say, stealing the show, so to speak, over the last year in terms of accommodations. But now, what we're seeing is a huge surge in travel demand in the United States that has really just followed the trend line with all of the vaccinations and the work that's been happening on mitigating the pandemic. And I mean, it's still not over yet, but for the most part, America is very much, getting to the point where it's fully open for business, and people are really excited to travel again. And this is creating huge demand um, across the board in terms of, in terms of accommodations in general. And there's a huge gap in terms of the labor gap that is there to meet that demand. I recently published our State of the Workforce, U.S. Accommodations State of the Workforce report, which we update on a regular basis. So sign up for our newsletter. But what we're seeing is that labor supply across the accommodation subsector is still very low, in upwards of 30% nationally in terms of the number of workers to pre-COVID levels, reaching pre-COVID levels. So we still have a long way to go to staff the industry back up, and it really is location by location. So the markets that were hit the hardest in terms of the demand, in terms of losing their traveler base, are now suffering the most in terms of building that staff back up, because they had to let go of the most people, right? So some markets, especially the big urban markets, are like, in upwards of 50% deficit on the labor supply, current employment versus pre-COVID levels. So it's a tough situation.
So Luke, when you're saying 30%, it's 30% nationwide in the US, and is very, in these markets like urban markets, it's like 50%, for example, and that's very interesting, and it's makes me think about different things. For example, our thoughts as well, maybe that this shortage will also be in the let's say traditional vacation rental markets, because they were the first ones to restart. So how come the shortages are shorter? I mean, very naive question. Did people move out from the cities? They were in hospitality and just say, I'm going to be working on the coast or in the mountains doing the same type of job, but not in the city anymore. So do you see people moving? What's the reason behind these numbers?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing with our partners, which a lot of them, we have dozens of vacation rental partners throughout the United States, and a lot of them are in, very, far-flung destinations, in the mountains or in small beach towns where the labor supply is already very limited, right? And it's something that we call the island effect, where you have basically just a very tight labor market, seasonal. It's very difficult to find, especially people, obviously boots on the ground in terms of operations is the biggest challenge. It's not the only challenge, but that's where the real rubber meets the road in terms of trying to find people to flip the rooms, etc. But that challenge goes across the entire, organization in terms of, in terms of virtual or, marketing roles, guest services and reservations roles. So, and that's a good point that you had, Thibault, in terms of, the vacation rental space didn't suffer as much as the hotel space. So yeah, absolutely, you're right. And and it goes back to my point where, the markets that didn't get hit as hard on the demand side are definitely in better shape than markets where you did lose, like Orlando, Florida, for example, right? Huge deficit, almost a 60%, right, deficit in terms of workers compared to pre-COVID levels. And that's because markets like that depend a lot on international travelers saw their, demand basically cut, to zero. But then, smaller little beach towns and things like that, where people were flooding outside of the cities, were busier than ever, right? And that helped them to retain the talent. But again, there's the national and then there's the local, but it all, influences each other. And anyway, I'll stop talking there and let you follow up with any.
Oh, it is very interesting. So what are also the big, in your reports that people can get from your website? Of course, we'll link to it as well. What are the other surprising maybe numbers, or numbers that really illustrate the crisis you have now that you could be sharing with us today?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on in terms of the recovery itself, right? And that's where I think the biggest insight from the report came in terms of when will the labor market recover, right? So we put a number on that. And we're looking at like a full pre-COVID recovery sometime in the first quarter of 2022, next year, right? Nationwide, in terms of the accommodations workforce coming back to pre-COVID levels. But there is a big caveat here, and that's wages, right? Wages are almost certainly going to go up in the short term. And our thesis is that they will remain high in the long term, right? So if you're thinking that this is going to go away and that things are going to come back to the way they were, you're, at least in the U.S., you're in for a rude awakening, because there's a lot going on, beyond just accommodations and hospitality, on the labor side of the equation that is impacting wages overall. So big takeaway, we're going to see, rebound in, moving as we move into the first quarter of next year. It's going to be a rough summer in terms of staffing. We're also going to expect to see wages go up, and stay up, right? And so when you're thinking about your staffing strategy, what's the best solution there? Are you going after the talent now, offer your competitive wages and rates now, or hold off, right? And try to, kind of go bare bones now, and then beef up as the market kind of comes back, the labor force comes back. That's obviously for you to decide, but just expect it to pay more on wages across the board, I'd say, in the longer term.
And so that's the situation right now, again, in the US. And let's say some of your clients, why they turn to you and what you bring in terms of services, and maybe give us some tips as well, what you do for them, and maybe that could also inspire people to try to do this by themselves, or so turn to you as well. But I think it's also very interesting to see, okay, I'm a property manager in this situation right now. What could I do by myself, or through your services, or somebody else? Like, what kind of help is there right now to solve the problem?
Yeah, great question. So there are really two sides of the coin here, Thibault. The first one is finding the talent, right? And we addressed that. Recruitment is tough right now. Nobody's working yet. I mean, it's picking up. The second part of the equation here is talent retention, right? Keeping the people that you have. We all know that that's really where the big cost driver is, you know, in terms of the whole hiring and rehiring cycle, having to train, you know, individuals, and really bringing people on that, you know, see this as a career opportunity and want to stay and aren't going to, you know, a few months down the road, you know, jump ship and go over to, you know, the next best thing. So that's basically where we come in, you know, clearly on the recruitment side, but more than anything on the talent management side in terms of our best practices, the HR layer that we provide our clients in terms of everything that we do on the back end to keep our team members happy, is, you know, clearly part art and science in terms of incentives, training, providing what they need to see this as a career opportunity rather than just a temporary thing. And that creates value for our customers because they, you know, keep the employees that they have, the team members that they have.
I mean, if it's a tight supply, it's a tight market in terms of labor. Some markets are islands. I really like the term because as I have properties on an island, I can completely understand what it really, really means. It's very clear. So let's talk about this, finish off maybe with my last but one question, this bad word, poaching. When I hear this, I'm like, well, maybe tempted into hiring, you know, people who work pretty well at my competitors, right? Is it a bit bigger risk now? And again, is it when you work on this retention things, is it a way to avoid this poaching risk? Do you think it's a bigger risk right now, by the way?
Yeah, it really is a, that's an interesting question on the where are you going to recruit from, right? And clearly there's going to be a competition. It's this classic demand supply. It's a classic supply and demand story playing out right now. And it's been building up for really, at least in the US, a couple of decades where wages, in our opinion, have been not keeping up with the cost of living and also in terms of corporate profits. And what we're seeing now is a bigger kind of adjustment in terms of wages, right? Mm-hmm. So in a way, in the US, it's in a way very much an employee's market, so to speak. They do have the option to go to other, to the competitor, etc. Is that a good practice? Well, you have to do everything that, obviously, you're not actively going and seeking, out people from other companies to do that. You have to, make yourself known and really focus on culture, focus on team building, focus on making it a good place to work is going to pan out longer, better in the long term than focusing on, poaching employees from other companies.
Oh, I can imagine. In my mind as well, is like the risk, from your own employees being poached was also a big one. Right. So that's the situation right now in the US. So Europe, Europe is a bit behind, not that much behind. I mean, I just got my invitation to get my vaccine after months of waiting. So fantastic. Actually, in some markets, like I was thinking about the Netherlands, France, or Germany, for example, the markets where there's decent amount of supply and decent amount of local demand, bookings are rising, they're happening, and the shortage is going to happen. It's kind of clear, right? So as you're a few months ahead of us, I'm in Europe right now. Is there any advice you could be sharing with property managers? What could they do to anticipate that shortage?
Well, anticipate a spike, right? A surge So this is not going to be like demand slowly kind of comes back just based on what happening in the US. It's going to just, it's going to come back hard and fast. And COVID will, in my opinion, be a distant memory, in a couple of months. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, it's going to be behind us. So in order to prepare for that, start bulking up now, like don't wait until 2 months from, or, when the surge happens to start hiring, right? Start now, build your team in preparation for brighter days ahead that are coming very soon. And I would say you might find yourself in a bind, right? In terms of particularly on the ground staffing, right? Boots on the ground, finding people to turn beds, etc. So focus on, if you can't find the boots on the ground, try to find people to at least answer the phone, right? Over communicate with the guest. Make sure that you are letting them know that you understand any issues that they have in terms of the situation if you find yourself short-staffed with boots on the ground. And that's something we can help you with, on Extenteam, in terms of giving you the virtual team members to support your guest services and communications, reservations teams, to at the very least have a good level of customer support and service to to augment or to balance out the loss, maybe some loss of service on the ground, if that makes sense.
Well, that's very interesting, right? We always talk about making sure that the beginning of the end of the stay is amazing, and then what you're saying, that you may have to overcompensate with like more things you can do from far, like remote service, I would call this, to try to make up with maybe some like underground service that can't be maybe as frequent as usual, which would be the case for luxury villas. In my case, maybe we can't do daily cleaning, but at least we can try to make it up with something else remotely.
100%.
So, and just last question for you. So, in the virtual teams you were talking about, that if we come to you, even if I'm based in Europe, is it something you could be offering, for example, in terms of services?
We are exploring partnerships in the UK, so we can support English-speaking markets. Let's say it's going to be tough for like it's another challenge in Europe, right? Is because of the fragmentation and the language and diversity of the culture, makes it much bigger challenge to actually offer services to these markets, whether it's France, Italy, maybe Spain, not as bad, but just because of, Latin America. All our team members, we are big fans of the Philippines. All our team members are based out of the Philippines, and there's obviously a lot that goes into doing it. I mean, doing it yourself, go give it a go. You'll probably end up coming to us, in the long run, because it is not easy in terms of dealing with all of the ins and outs of managing and all the paperwork that's involved in doing that. In any case, back to the point in Europe, I think that on the trend side, you'll see, as travel really surges forward in some of these other markets like, France, Italy, we might see an even bigger challenge in terms of support, right? And yeah, so.
Luke, thanks so much for your insight. And if people want to know more about your services, or have more insight about what's going on in the market, especially in North America, especially in the US. What's the best way to reach you?
Just go to extenteam.com and check us out, especially our blog. Me coming from the research and insight side, we're publishing a lot there. So make sure to subscribe, and then of course reach out on LinkedIn, send me a direct message. Let's talk, and let us help you build your team up, right? And let's push the travel industry forward. So it's super exciting to be part of that, and I think we're all going to make it. We'll be good. So.
Thanks for your time today. So Luke Bujarski, you are the co-founder of Extenteam. Thank you again for being with us today, and I wish you a great day.
Thanks, Thibault. Likewise.